in a studio. Here we go. Going live. And then I always like to check on my phone that we are actually live before I start.
So you're talking to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. We could talk to ourselves for an hour. No one would know. They would be obviously very upset to have missed it, clearly.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look. I'm hoping that is us. Yes, live on Facebook. Hello, everyone. Hello, Facebook. Hello, talented people, page followers and random people who like to know stuff about telly. I'm Kimberly from Talented People, and once again we have a lovely Wednesday lunchtime session for you guys. This one is about the edit. So I will just talk briefly about these sessions and what they aim to do before I introduce our guests today, who've very much we're very grateful that they have given up their time to talk to us about the edit. So as you guys will know, sort of every other Wednesday lunchtime now, during this lockdown situation, Talented People have been bringing you sessions on everything from making ofs to how-tos, to just chats with important industry people and cameos from small children. Excuse me, mummy, she says. Oh, say hi, Poppy, you may as well.
Hi, and
this could be interesting. Did you know anything about the edit?
No, I'm just saying, and also because my tights has got a hole in it.
Yes, go on then. I'll see you in a little bit. She's got to just go and sort out a wardrobe malfunction. Okay, great. That's just how we roll because we're all at home, aren't we, in varying situations. So thanks for bearing with. So this session is all about the edit, and it may or may not include 4-year-olds. Let's hope less so, because she doesn't know as much as these guys here. But yes, we are a production staffing company. We obviously deal with you guys a lot to help you find work. We would love your CVs. If we don't have them already, send them in via the link on our website, which is a job listing. Send us your CV. And really, these are just lovely informal chats to kind of keep you company, to entertain you, inform you, and hopefully you can learn something useful for your career, whether you are working now, taking a break, or between things or looking for work. So waffle aside, let me introduce our guests today. We have Derek Wilson. Hello, Derek.
Hi.
Derek, nice to see you too. And Tonye, Paul-Worika. Hi, Tonye.
Hi.
These two guys are editors on all sorts. I was just reminding myself of your CVs, like hugely versatile, from docs and fact-ent formats to archive interview to some live stuff, Tonye, in your past with the VTs and things, all sorts. And actually, I have to say, I think in terms of editors' roles, that's got to be one of the best things, is hopping from project to project, 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes much longer, obviously, but doing different things. So welcome. You guys have got a lot of knowledge to share about working with edit producers and how you guys got into the edit from an editing point of view. And Celine Gilbert. Hi, Celine.
Hi.
Celine is a senior and series edit producer and edit director, currently cutting All or Nothing on Juventus for Amazon Prime, which is very exciting. It's been announced this week, but also has done amazingly versatile stuff in her past, including big primetime fact-ent series, docs, formats, history series on the UAE, right? All sorts. So can talk very well about the versatility of scripting, writing, things we should be doing right now to be upskilling ourselves and getting into the edit. So, and Dan Howell, who we were hoping to come in. Oh, I think he's here. Let's bring him in. Dan's on a shoot. Here he is. Dan Howell is a PD.
Come on, Dan.
Joining us.
You can do it.
I'm so sorry. I'm in a car in a cul-de-sac somewhere in the southeast.
You made
it. I
made it. Yeah.
Welcome along. I was just finishing my intro, so you popped on at the perfect time. So Dan is a PD, currently lurking in a cul-de-sac somewhere undisclosed.
Yes.
He's working on a documentary about a celebrity, again undisclosed, which is obviously intriguing, but has worked on series like Hospital and can talk really well about being, I suppose, the newer end of edit producing than the likes of Celine and obviously the editors who've been in the edit their lives. So let's crack on. Thanks for joining us. I think what most people are keen to talk about, and obviously for us from a kind of an editorial staffing perspective, we predominantly deal with edit producers over editors at the moment. But perhaps it would be useful to know, take it in turns. Derek, how did you first get into the edit as an editor?
Oh my God, I'm too old for that. It's such a long time ago, it's quite hard to remember now. Basically just practicing cutting my own stuff. It was assisting other editors, which it doesn't really happen so much now. But you can still do that, I guess. So yeah, it's basically assisting editors, seeing what they do, learning from them. And then I used to sort of, I think one of the first things I cut for a company, I was working at Carlton TV, and I cut a bar mitzvah for the boss, for his friend. So basically, yeah, that was one of the first things I did, and did a good job of that, and got a nice bottle of bubbly. And then basically they could see I could actually, you know, edit. So
Nice.
They started giving me very small sort of jobs that weren't too sort of important. And I think I did a sort of video music compilation thing that was a regular monthly thing, literally compiling together these music tracks for a couple of clients who used to come in and have quite a good time, and basically used to do that, and that's kind of how I started, really. And
yeah, so you touched on immediately then it's about building up, isn't it? And you were saying perhaps it doesn't happen so much anymore, but you kind of, you did bits and bobs for people, or you learnt things on your own. I don't know if that happens all the time now, but that's certainly a way.
You certainly have to learn on your own, really. There's not really any other way of doing it. It's just editing as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then even though you say you can edit, of course, the big thing is whether you can work with clients. So
Yes.
it's a trust of how you get on with people.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And we will certainly come on to that. Tonye, our other editor on this panel, how did you come to the decision that you wanted to be an editor, and then how did you get your way in?
I did a TV course at university, so we did production, so we did across all the areas, and I think for me it was the power of when you're editing that really spoke to me. So I knew that I wanted to be an editor quite early on. And then when I left university, it doesn't actually matter that you did a TV course. So I was a runner in a post house for a while. Then I moved on and I was an edit assistant in a production company. And basically that's how I then started editing properly, because I started to be allowed to cut shorter things. And eventually then I was working on the Paul O'Grady show, and I started cutting some VTs when in downtime, and then some of them got aired, and it just worked on like that.
Yeah,
it was a long journey, to be honest. There was a lot of machine room jobs and digitizing, which do I have to explain what digitizing is?
No one knows what that is.
Yeah, there was lots of like little tasks that I had to do before I could then be consistently editing like full time.
Yeah, and I suppose the learning the ropes as an editor is one thing, isn't it? And then, as Derek touched on, and as we'll move on to, it's actually learning how to work with clients, but also collaborate with edit producers, which is a whole nother ball game, isn't it? It's very different sort of sitting in your bedroom learning how to do stuff, or doing bits and bobs in your first jobs. But yeah, Celine, what about you? What was your sort of route into the edit? Because you predominantly edit, produce solely, right? You don't PD?
Yeah, but I was a PD for quite a while, and back in those days, if you became a PD, you automatically went into the edit. So, you know, PD meant you cut your own material, you directed it and then you cut it. That's obviously completely changed now. So the big step was to go from AP to PD, because that was your route into the edit. And the way I did it was I made myself, I'd AP'd on Ladette to Lady, on a season of Ladette to Lady. And then they got a second season commissioned. And I said, I'll only do it. And I'd made, you know, I think I'd done things like designing the curriculum, and, you know, so I'd made myself nice. I got in there really really well, and then said, I'll come back and do it if you let me PD one of the episodes. And I think that that's an absolutely essential skill, is being able to make yourself indispensable, because then you've got some bargaining power. You can say, because I mean, I just see it all the time these days, where people are just, you know, they get good at what they do, and there's a real, you know, everyone wants to just keep you at that level rather than help you get on to the next. So I think increasing your negotiating power is a real skill.
Yeah, having added value that no one else can bring.
Bargaining the hell out of it.
Yeah. Talking of that, actually, Dan, tell us how did you get into your first edit, and how long ago was that?
Yeah, I did that, exactly what Celine's talking about it. So my first edit was 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half ago, and it was on Hospital, and it was exactly the same thing. So I PD'd a series before and said that I really wanted to sort of do an edit and gain edit experience. I didn't get an edit on the first time round, but I made sure that I hung out in the edit and sort of tried to, you know, soak it all up as much as possible, which I'd done on other series before, just sort of lingering in the doorway. And then when I came back to the next series of Hospital, I asked if there was any way I could do an edit if I was going to come back, and that's exactly what they agreed to. So yeah, it was exactly the same thing. It's going for a second series of something that you know and that you know the grammar of, and I also found that really helped me when I then got into the edit, is that I knew the series I was working on, so it seemed a bit less of a scary prospect. Obviously, it was obviously terrifying as well, but yeah, so that was what.
Yeah, got it. I think Dan's reception is a bit dodgy, so bear with us. But I know we got the gist of that. I think it would give you the confidence, right? If you felt nervous about going into the edit, which I remember my first edit, and I suppose it was rare. Again, like it's not these days. Sorry, it's not in the older days. It is now to have your own edit. But I, for my first PD job, also got an edit. And I was terrified, even though I'd shot the stuff, I knew what we had, I knew the subject matter better than everybody. Walking into that edit for the first time, with the editor sitting there looking at you expectantly saying hello, it is terrifying. You feel very vulnerable because you know that you're sort of to blame for everything on those screens in front of you, and everything is massive on a screen, and all the sound is, you know, any problems with them is massive too. Let's talk about that relationship then between editor and edit producer. So I know everybody has different opinions on this. These are all sort of subjective. So, you know, listen into how this is done from these guys' points of view, but make your own judgments, of course. But Tonye, should we start with you? How do you like to work with edit producers? So you're the editor producer sort of walks in day one. Yeah. What's the sort of, in your opinion, the best way to work together?
I think you should just have a conversation, really. So everyone likes working differently. So some EPs will be happy to use Avid and send sequences over and stuff like that. Others will want to do paper edits and so on. So you just need to work out the best way for you and for them. So you both have a conversation about what you like, really. Because when I edit, I prefer to sort of get on with things. I don't necessarily want the edit producer to be sat next to me watching me at the start, you know, when we're running through rushes. So I prefer if I was doing something and they're doing something, and then, you know, and then we come together and, you know, it's like a little like that. And then towards the end, you're both on the same thing. But at the start, I need space. Yeah. So, you know, so we have to have a conversation at the start of the edit. To see how we're going to work.
It's sort of division of labor as well in that respect as well, I guess.
Because everything is, you don't have time. You very rarely have enough time on edits anyway. So you really do need to work out the best way to get everything done. And I also try to find out deadlines as soon as possible as well. So, because usually it's really weird actually when you're an editor, there's a lot of information that you have to get from the edit producer. So things like, when are the viewings, what are the deadline expectations, things like that. So
that's useful. So have a plan, have a conversation, and then figure out deadlines. Okay, that's Tonye's way of working. Derek, how do you deal with that day one of a new edit producer you've never worked with before, perhaps quite junior, comes in and goes, okay?
I mean, similar thing to what Tonye has just said, actually. The most important thing is building up some sort of rapport. So certainly having a laugh is a really important thing, because you guarantee it's going to get stressful, especially with viewings looming. And, deadlines get tighter and tighter these days. So I think that is really key. So it's really good to develop a relationship from day one. And the worst thing an edit producer can probably do is, bury their head in the sand and sort of just try and make a program on their own, because that never works. And it's like, the best edits I've been in working with edit producers is when you've got a really good, you chat through stuff. So you'll be viewing maybe separately in the first couple of weeks, and you're looking through mountains and mountains of footage, and you're trying to get your head around all this footage. But normally what you do is, after you've had a bit of viewing on one day, you'll then discuss, what did you think of the footage you've got? And you're basically trying, with documentary anyway, you're trying to find that A story, that sort of A character story that you think the viewer engage with. So it's really important to sort of chat about that and see what you both think, and bounce ideas to and from each other. And I think that's important throughout the whole of the process, basically.
That sounds very exciting, but there's obviously always a kind of a client brief, or there was an idea of what they thought that shoot or that day's filming was supposed to be about. So what happens if that's different?
Oh yeah, it very rarely is about what they say. You normally ignore that, and you basically watch the footage and make your own mind up. Because the thing is, it's like something on paper, or what's maybe a director has seen in real life, and then what happens and translates to the screen, and seeing it, watching it back on screen is a different thing. And I've often had people say to me, "Oh my God, you got to see Dave. He's a great guy. He's brilliant. You got to use him." And you watch him, you go, well, "He's really boring. I don't get this." And that's why it's so important to have that separation, so the editor can look at it afresh. And that's why also having an edit producer is good, because they've got distance from the filming as well. So yeah, it's just a process of you've got to take it, obviously you take into account what's been said, but you do start from scratch, I think.
Yeah. Dan, we look like we've got decent reception for you right now. Tell us about your experience then on so after lurking the corridors of hospital and annoying people like Derek, and then getting your own edit so that you were actually allowed to be there, how did you feel walking in, and what was your sort of process as a new edit producer?
I got lucky, and the editor I worked with was incredibly friendly and understanding, and I just sort of walked in and just tried to be as honest as possible about the fact that I'd never done this before, and sort of knew the process kind of vicariously, but didn't really know the process. So I just walked in and said, "Hello, I'm Dan. I don't know what I'm doing." But I obviously knew the series, and I'd been on the shoot, and I knew the material, and I knew what we were driving at, and I felt that really gave me a bit of confidence going into that room, because I could talk authoritatively about what I thought we were supposed to be doing. But I just tried to be as honest as possible and say, I don't what do you think? What do you think is the best way we should approach this stuff? And I made a point of asking how my editor liked to work, because obviously I was very aware that I had no kind of prior experience of this. So I didn't want to walk in and try and impose some sort of laughable way that I want to do things. you know, so I very much took my lead at the beginning from my editor. And what Tonye and Derek were both saying about, you know, it's all about having a conversation constantly between two people and then more people. I found that so helpful to just keep breaking and talking with my editor that I was working with about where are we actually going now? Like, what have we got? Okay, so like, what have we got to do next? What have we got to do by the end of the week? Are we really, you know, is this really the A story? And having those constant conversations is really exciting because it really makes you feel like you're a team doing it. And it certainly gave me a lot of comfort. And I was very aware of what Derek was saying about not just burying your head in the sand and going, oh my God, I've got no idea what I'm doing. This is all so stressful. So I went the other way and just dramatically overshared for 8 weeks.
Dramatic oversharing. I mean, that it's true though that it's an incredibly intense relationship, isn't it? I mean, how often are you stuck in a room, often with no natural light, as we all know, for 6 to 8 to whatever weeks, with one other person that you've either got to get on very well, or at least have a good understanding of how each other works, and I know when to step away. Celine, can you talk a bit about how you like to work with editors, or any advice that you would give for sort of the newer edit producers?
I mean, when I come into an edit, I try very, very quickly to get the measure of who I'm working with, how they like to work, what their strengths are. You know, are they incredibly well organized, or do I need to pick up the slack on, you know, on the organization, or are they utterly forensic, which means I don't need to bother about any of that? I try to get, you know, to work it out so that we can complement each other. You know, I try to do that as quickly as possible, really. And like Derek said, show that, you know, this is a collaboration, that we're going to, you know, this is all about working together. But, you know, it's so much easier now that I've got experience, you know, and I can remember the first few years, just how awful some of my experiences were, and how incredibly soul destroying. And, you know, when you take it very, very seriously, it's hard. And I think, so I think Dan's approach of being honest is really, you know, has real value, and will really help. But, you know, when the chips are down, you know, sometimes it can get brutal. And, you know,
it's a really tough environment, isn't it? It can be really, I remember it can be really, really good fun.
Yeah,
and really, you know,
awful.
Friday treats and, you know, good jokes, but then viewings and difficult times.
I've been moved off an edit, you know. I mean, I've had, I think one of my first edits was, the SP came in and said, right, you go out on the shoot, I'm taking over this edit. And actually to try to come back from that and work up the courage to get back into the edit was really, really hard. And, you know, it was just, it's, you know, it's friends. The industry doesn't, in a way, the industry doesn't provide you with that sense, that safety net. It's your mates that are going, you absolutely can do this, and you've got to go back into the edit. And funnily enough, you know, that you know, if I got a bad reference, it didn't last for very long. You know, it's funny how that stuff all gets swept under the carpet quite quickly. So you just kind of, just got to keep your arm, keep going, just keep going. But, you know, I have had some of the worst moments in my career early on. And, you know, it's a miracle that any of us, you know, carry
on, right? I know. And, you know, looking at your CV now, and, you know, where you are at, you would never think that. So that's something to give you guys all confidence that, you know, mistakes can be made, you can move on from them, you learn from them. It's all about, you know, knowing what to do next, I suppose, and believing in yourself and taking that time out. Tonye, have you got any stories you'd like to share about either difficult or really brilliant times that might be helpful for people to hear?
I'm trying to think of, I'm not sure. I mean, there are difficult times always in the edit where you'll be working long hours, you know, really late hours to get things ready for the screening the next day. But I do think like the relationship aspect is what's most important, because to have a bad experience, I mean, it's almost like a marriage, I think, because when you go into the screenings, you and your edit producer, you need to be a team so that when you get the bad notes, you deal with them together, and it's not like you're blaming each other for it. Because I feel like, Celine, if you've been in better edit relationship, then there's no blame game. You just go, okay, you know, the notes, let's address the notes and do it together. And it's not like, this is your faults, you did this badly, you know, it's, you do it together. And so, yeah, that's what I think. I think it's really sad when people have awful experiences in the edit, because it can be very stressful, and it's not, it shouldn't.
Yeah. And there's a way to deliver notes, isn't there, from above? I mean, and you know, we can't talk for those people who do that. And I've certainly had dreadful notes, but there are ways of doing it which feels very personal. And there are ways of delivering them which is, this isn't the best it could be. Yeah. These are my reasons why. Yeah. Could you jump on and fix it? Good, that's fine. But anything that's a bit more of a personal attack is quite hard to take, isn't it? And that is really tough. Yeah. What about I think what a lot of people will want to be knowing, and we touched on it earlier, is how best to help yourself into the edit. So if you're an AP or a DV director or a PD who's yet to get into the edit, Dan has lurked in corridors on a sort of long-running series where he sort of got himself into edits and tried to be helpful and learn stuff, and that's a really good way. Celine, do you have any thoughts on how best sort of junior people who are trying to get into the edit could achieve that?
Yeah, I think always make your intentions known. I think Dan did that. I think that's really important. Tell anyone who'll listen, this is what I want to do. I want to get into the edit. And if they'll let you come in for a day to have a look, just so that it isn't a complete, you know, so you learn what the screens do and what everything, you know, so you get the geography of it, go ahead. So I think make your intentions known. And for anyone, any PD, anyone who's in a senior position, if you're working in an edit house and there's an edit assistant wandering around, coming in, bringing you tea, or what, ask them, what do you want to do? Do you want to come and spend a day, you know, 2 hours in the rushes? You know, if you got up there, don't forget to send the ladder down for everybody else to come up to. I feel that's really important. So, and then I think really key is to have a rough idea of where you want to work, what area. Is it fact ent? Is it documentary? And then, you know, particularly something you can do now is, you know, one of the hardest things is working out, you know, is writing comm, is structuring the sequences, and so my advice is take this time to watch the kinds of programs that you like and then transcribe them. Just write all the comm down first, learn how that works and how it tees up what's coming in the actuality, and then you'll see, oh, you'll start to understand the tricks of the trade. So when a contributor hasn't said something or hasn't mentioned that they're talking about breakfast, so it's in the line of comm, you'll begin to understand how that all joins up, how the storytelling works overall, and precisely that, the tricks of the trade. So it's watch and transcribe, stop, pause, write everything down, write every shot down, write every line of comm, just write the script.
That's such good advice, because let's face it, we're all watching a lot of telly right now, aren't we? And I know it's very tempting to just switch off from mainstream TV stuff and watch your drama box sets. But if you work in unscripted and you want to be getting into the edit, you can access absolutely everything on TV on demand, and that is one brilliant way to get your head around scripting, certainly, and the choices that people make. Celine, I think that's such a good one. Dan, how do you feel? Are you feeling more confident now in your way forward? And what sort of next steps for you, sort of getting into do more edits under your belt?
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, first, I think what Celine was saying previously, like, is definitely really important, which is like your network of like friends in TV. Like, I've got a really great, amazing network of friends in TV, and we all just message each other all the time with the sort of questions that you're too either embarrassed or wary of asking other people who you might be on a job with. So like reach out to the people around you who might have already done an edit or all of that, and have advice to give you. Don't be afraid of, like Derek was saying, burying your head in the sand is a bad thing. And then as for me, so I did a number of edits on like established series, and then for my next shooting job, which is the one I'm doing now, it was a lot easier to say, well, obviously I'd like to edit it as well, because you've got a sort of proven bank by that point of things that you've cut that you can direct people back to if they're a bit unsure about you. So I didn't just do one edit on a pre-existing series that I knew. I then took the opportunity to do like two more. So then I really felt really confident, okay, working on that particular series. I know the grammar. And then we did the hospital special as well, which was like a totally different experience. So like I got, even though I was still within the same series, I got a lot of firsts. Like I cut an episode, then we did the special, then I cut an episode one of the following series. So they're all different sort of experiences within the same framework. And so I felt like at that point really grounded and really ready to take on something else and do something else.
Yes, great. And actually, thank you guys. I've just noticed you're starting to ask questions. That's brilliant. We've probably got another sort of 15 to 20 minutes to chat. So do chuck questions in the comments and I'll keep an eye. Something coming up is about remote editing, unsurprisingly. How we're all feeling about that and how it's working. So let me come to you, Derek. How are you finding editing remotely?
Well, personally, I love it. I think it's great. I haven't got very far to come to work in the morning, climb up the stairs. I mean, most of the jobs I've done in lockdown have been with people I know. So that's obviously easier because you've already got a relationship with them. So you haven't got to, build that relationship. But having said that, the current job I'm on now, which is a science doc, I'm working with someone I've never worked before with, but he's very experienced and, we're getting on really well. And it's going very well.
And just on a practical note, how are you actually interacting?
We tend to do a lot of WhatsApp. So, but a lot of the time we're on a WhatsApp call and we keep the call open, and he can view material that the company that I'm working for now, I've got a setup where he can actually see the output of my suite on his computer, as he calls it, SpyCam. And I can turn it off though. So he basically he can watch stuff with me that I pulled or we need to discuss or interviews. So that it kind of works. And we kind of discuss it. And
can you play a joke on it where you cut the feed of what you're showing him and just show him something else that, just for a laugh, like a Teletubbies episode that you're working on?
Yeah, I guess I could do. I'd have to go to a lot of effort to load something in, but yeah. But are you finding it okay overall? I was going to say, because I worked with Dan on a hospital series in lockdown on the COVID special, and it worked really well. We had a WhatsApp group, which I think is really key, because normally you just run in someone's edit and have a little chat about what's going on, or just catch up. But obviously with remote editing, you can't do that. So sort of WhatsApp's become a good alternative to that. And you can still have quite a laugh on WhatsApp, amazingly. Dan was quite good at that.
You definitely need to get the desktop app. That's quite helpful, isn't it?
Well, we were just doing it on the phone, but it's useful because then for instance, if you're doing a series and you're doing one episode, what another episode is also doing. So if they're using a story you've got your eye on,
Yeah.
You can't use that story, or
Right.
if there's some sort of update on graphics or whatever, whatever it is, I think it's really key to have that conversation just going on, apart from email, because email's a bit tedious to have to keep sending emails. So yeah.
And Tonye, how are you finding it? What have you been cutting remotely?
So I've been cutting. So last year I did do a lot of remote jobs, and we would talk via WhatsApp, phone calls, and we would share the screen on TeamViewer sometimes, some setups, so that he could see what I'd cut. Other people I've done Zoom calls with and shared my screen that way when it's been quite towards the end of the edit and we really need to see everything. I mean, but there's so many different ways that people are doing it. At the start, it was all very rudimental and it was like TeamViewer and so on. And now there's like, I mean, it seems every job I've got to download a different type of software that we're using. But, now it's all like IP stuff going on, and it's getting better and better. But it's the same thing. Some people need to be a bit more like seeing what you're doing all the time, and other people are quite happy for you to just send them an MP4 at the end of the day. So, but I've found it.
Are there any major disadvantages that you're finding, or what's the hardest bit?
Sometimes the sync, the audio isn't fantastic, to be honest, and that can be a problem. So I might not know if something was out of sync. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And Celine, from an edit producing point of view, how has it been remotely? I'm going to have to say the thing that everyone has to say, which is you're on mute. It's only once this time. It's good.
And I'm glad it was me. I just, I like to fulfill expectations.
How's it been remotely?
I found it surprisingly smoother than expected. I thought it was going to be really difficult, but actually, we are an adaptable species. It doesn't take long to get your head around it. What I have found harder is, when it starts getting really stressful and you're building up to a deadline, it's just not the same when you're on your own in your office or, in the dining room, and you're not with other people, because it's extraordinary what just, a look, a smile, a joke, or, flipping heck, not, it's amazing how far that goes to dissipating stress. And I think without that human contact, it's really hard, because, when the laptop's shut or when you turn off the WhatsApp call, you're still there with this deadline kind of barreling towards you like a steam train. So I found that quite hard.
Sort of emotionally challenging.
Emotionally challenging, but the technically, it's been fine. I've got an amulet. I'm plugged into the Avid, so I can watch, direct. I've got Spycam. I can do, and it's extraordinary. That works really.
It's quite
hard.
incredible what's been pulled off, isn't it, by post houses and production companies and just humans.
And then the other thing that I'd say is that, having to write notes, so having to send notes means that you have to be more specific. You can't just go, well, see if you can just do, make it better. You have to actually
be specific. It's really annoying.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Very good question here, actually. For anyone here, do you feel, from Malcolm, hello Malcolm, do you feel that you need to be a PD first to become an edit producer?
Well, I don't necessarily think you do. I guess it helps to have experience of actually being on the ground and seeing how material is gathered, because otherwise you might sort of become too far removed from how you kind of do that. So I don't think it's necessarily a given, though. I think lots of the skills are the same. Obviously, it's understanding how to structure things, how to get the beginning, middle, and end of a story, what component parts you need, how to spot a good character, and a little moment that seems like a little kind of boring little moment but ends up being quite important. I don't necessarily think you have to be a PD first. I would say probably I would have always wanted to do that, because it gives you more experience of what's actually going on there on the ground.
Yeah,
makes your request a bit more reasonable as well when you
that's a good
ask
way of
people to
putting
go
it. Yeah,
pickups.
actually, you could ask it the other way around. Do you think you need to have been in the edit first to be a good director? I mean, that's the catch-22, isn't it? Because to be a great PD, you do need to understand what's needed for the edit, and no one actually teaches you that stuff. So you could argue really that at AP, we should all be trying to get into the edit, or companies should be helping you into the edit, so that when you are a PD, you know exactly how to shoot to order, to a certain degree anyway. Anyone else? Celine, what do you think about whether you need to be PD before EP?
No, I don't think so, but I do think that it gives you an understanding and a bit more sympathy about how bloody hard it is to shoot and get stuff, and how what an extraordinary pressure it is to try to mold reality to your desires and wishes. So I think, if anything, it gives you that understanding of and that it's good to have that understanding. I don't think it's essential, because I think you can the material speaks for itself, and if you know how to put it together, then you can do that job. But I think increasingly, and I've worked on a lot of projects where the edit is running in tandem with the shoot, and we're often feeding back to the shoot and asking them to get pickups, and I think it would be very difficult to do that properly. So often we're being asked to kind of imagine the scenes, the sync, the interview questions. We're feeding that all out from the edit. And I think if you didn't have any experience as a PD, that would be incredibly difficult. And I mean, at least certainly the last two projects I've worked on, we've been shooting and cutting at the same time. So I don't know if that's a common experience for everyone else, but I think there's a lot of feedback from the edit to the shoot these days.
Yeah, how about you guys, the editors? Tonye, Derek, are you finding that quite often you're sitting next to somebody who hasn't been on the shoot at all, or where there's the shoot still continuing and you're having to cut and then base whatever you're cutting on what's happening in the field still?
Most of the things that I've worked on have already been shot. I have worked on things where they're still ongoing and you can get pickups and master interviews and so on. But most of the edit producers I've worked with have come from production, maybe not on that particular job, but they have been PDs previously. I mean, to be honest, as an editor, I would like it if PDs had experience in the edit, because sometimes when you get rushes, you just think, how is this supposed to cut together? And so you kind of wish that people had experience to know how things cut together, because sometimes you just think, this doesn't, the person is talking about something and I've got no shot of what they're talking about, just little things like that. So as an editor, but obviously I'm biased, I'm like, send them all into the edit so that they can see what's going on.
Yeah.
You can go out again, but this is the industry, and you don't get that opportunity a lot of the time. So.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It is completely backwards if you think about it. The fact that you walk into the edit for the first time, having possibly directed for years sometimes, and then going, oh, I'm supposed to hold my shot for longer. I mean, something that we always say when people ask us about the edit is to get feedback on your rushes at an early stage. So whether you're an AP or even a researcher who's getting bits and bobs of shooting practice and you're self-shooting, then ask your bosses, whether that's your direct line manager, a PD, or an edit producer, or the editor themselves, ideally, if you can just get their number or ask if that's okay, for feedback. Don't you think, Derek?
Yeah, I think it's kind of essential, really, so you understand, the grammar of how editing works. And, you know, getting into an edit and just watching people assemble stuff together. I mean, you know, I've had stuff where they've gone out and shot interviews, and then you get it back and you go, okay, that's a great interview. And then you're like, where's the cutaway? And they're like, oh, do you need that? And then you're like, well, how do you cut anything out if you haven't got another shot to go to, you know? So, yeah, I think that does happen quite a lot.
I do think genuinely people don't always know what a cutaway is. They've heard the term, but if you're not taught that, or if you don't have that proactive sort of inquiring mind to go and find out what that is, and then you sort of confidently walk into a shoot and you don't want anyone to know that you don't know a lot about what you're doing, you just start filming, that's when you come unstuck. And that's, I think, where it's partly to do with that person needing to go out and, you know, try harder maybe and ask more questions, but it's also a lot to do with the industry not helping those people to do that first. And I mean, Tonye, you've worked somewhere, haven't you, where they've been pretty good at getting newbies into the edit?
Yeah, I worked at for Angel Eye, and they a lot when I was cutting, we had people coming in all the time to sit down just to see how it worked. Like we had runners, we had people, office runners even, who weren't even on the shoot so much. You know, it was really good for them to see how the edit worked, because then they would be like, oh, that person might have needed a shot of their hands or something at that point, you know. And so for them to learn stuff like that so early on in their careers is really useful. And I wish that more companies would think about training up, you know, because you then get loyalty. You might get someone who's going to turn out to be amazing and they've got like loyalty to your company. Yeah,
absolutely right. And I just think that the generation coming through now, who have brilliant smartphones with amazing cameras and probably free editing software that you can get pretty much everywhere, there's so many ways that you can help yourself. I think, you know, I don't want us to sound like dinosaurs, but there wasn't this sort of thing when I was coming up through shooting. I had to hire a camera or find someone who had one I could film on. But genuinely, you know, right now, you guys who are trying to get into it could film a sequence at home, you know, making a cup of tea, film your partner, someone, friend, not that that's allowed in your house at the moment, but film someone making a cup of tea and then work out how you'd edit it yourself, you know, load it onto a bit of software and go, and then you will immediately realize that you didn't get or the shot that you did that you thought was a close-up wasn't close up enough to look any good when you're cutting it together. That would be some advice I think straight away you could do right now. Celine has said, you know, you can be watching telly and analysing it, critiquing it, you know, press pause, rewind, listen to the script. I mean, is there anything else that we feel that people who aren't working at the moment could be doing while they're at home?
I think one of the sort of quite main things now is in an edit, quite often you've got the editors on an Avid, but also the edit producer is also on an Avid now. And that happens more and more. Yeah. So, I mean, if you can get your hands on, you know, trying to use an Avid and just learning how to use the markers, because when it really works well is when you've got, I'll be marking up, you know, sync, and you basically are going through it, watching it, you're writing sort of a brief outline of, you know, what they're saying, and then also the edit producers using a similar system because they're watching separate rushes. So when I get, you know, rushes, I can easily see, you know, what jump to someone saying something very quickly. And I think, you know, that sort of thing is really useful, a really good skill to learn now anyway, whether it's Avid or whether it's one of the other things like Foreseen or, you know, just any of those logging sort of softwares be really useful.
Go ahead, Dan. I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say it's kind of less about now, but more when you're on a shooting job, like what the guys were saying about trying to get your work in front of an editor or something. So I did a shooting job, which was a long running series, and it was hideously embarrassing. But I just went in and asked one of the editors if they'd mind just for 15 minutes over lunch, just telling me, you know, what they thought of one particular role that I knew I'd shot. And he was amazing and just said, so I'm now going to tell you 20 things never to do again. And then I made a list of all those 20 things, and I try not to do them, but I inevitably do still do them. But that was just in 15 minutes, and it just like blew my mind, like how helpful it was and how much it could inform your shooting. So it's like what Celine was saying earlier really resonated, which is that there are people, they're few and far between, who come to you and go, oh, do you want to get a bit more experience in this or that? But more often than not, you have to sort of go up to people, swallow your pride a bit and go, excuse me, would you mind just watching this thing, that what I did? And, you know, would you tell me if it's good or not? And that was like something I was so bad at doing like 5 years ago, but have just got more shameless, I suppose.
But I genuinely think it's it's a lovely personality trait anyway. Like it's quite humbling to say, I'm not sure what I'm doing and I need to learn from it. I'm confident in certain skills of mine. This I'm not. Please, could you help? I just don't think you can go wrong with that, because it's such a nice quality, I think, to be yourself being self-aware, and you're also being assertive. So there's two really good things for either an employer or whoever you're asking to feel about you. I don't think there could be any sort of negative traits there. And I know, you know, like Tonye, you said earlier, that would be amazing if everybody could just get into the edit and learn from early on. It would make your jobs better, easier, the programs, you know, even better. That speaks to that exactly, doesn't it? So yeah, I think I really feel that we need to get more junior people into the edit earlier. It's sort of how that, I think. So there's definitely a lot you could be doing yourselves. It probably is harder at the moment. You know, there's some questions here about how can you do the lurking in edit corridors, obviously, without being able to lurk in edit corridors. But I feel like, you know, if you've been in the industry a little while, there's definitely people you could be tapping up. You know, call them out of the blue. Everyone loves a phone call. Like, I was actually looking at my phone the other day thinking, I just want to speak to someone. Who haven't I spoken to recently? And I called an old friend from Telling. We had an amazing chat. And it's those sorts of people that you could go to say, look, I'm trying to work out how I can get into the edit. You know, what do you know about what's going on? Or what could I be doing to improve myself? So there's a lot you could do yourself. But I do think companies that we're working with as well, we are really trying to encourage to use some sort of shadowing scheme, or, I mean, it's always money related, isn't it? It's always hard to do that, but to let people into the edit where possible. Any last questions, let us know, because we're going to have to start wrapping up shortly. So I've been jotting down notes on my pad, which I like to do while we talk, and it's quite fun. So a little summary at the end. So Dan, I wrote down dramatic oversharing, which I really enjoyed. I'm not necessarily sure if that is actually, you know, advice or not, but that's just Dan's approach. He just walked in and went, but I like that. I've also written down trying to work out each other's complementary skill sets. So where Celine said, you know, if you know that your editor is perhaps not the most organized, but they're super quick at something, then you think, okay, I need to pick up that slack. Seeing each other as a team, a real collaboration, having that early conversation with your between editor and edit producer, to say, how are we going to do this? How do you like to work? How do you like to work? Shall we divide and conquer? Shall we do stuff together? Being honest about your rushes as well. I think that, Derek, that sort of stuck in my head about not, yeah, often as a PD, if you've been on the shoot, you remember something in a different way to watching it at face value. And it's not always as good as you thought it was on the shoot. And actually quite often it's the opposite, isn't it? And it's the little things that you didn't think were great that really are. Have a plan, work out your deadlines. Tonye is a fan of deadlines, and like, so you've got targets to work towards. Let's have a look. Tina Curley, thanks for watching, Tina. This is just a comment more than anything for you, Dan. She thinks what you did was brilliant, Dan. There's no teachers in all of this, so your way seems the most logical. And Tina needs to gain more confidence to be shameless. Totally agree with that. Tina, I know your CV. You're a super experienced PD. You've just got to ask and push in the nicest possible way and get yourself in there. It's about confidence. I do think a lot of it is about confidence, isn't it? Lots of people agreeing with you there. So I suppose, unless you guys have got anything that I haven't asked you that you've got burning that wants to jump out of your brain and into the brains of the other people watching, I may start wrapping up. Have you got any other thoughts? Dan, you look like you're about to drive somewhere. We're about to lose you.
If first going into the edit, what I did was I just messaged around all of my friends who I knew had done edits and said, like, what's the order of the way you approach things? Like, what's the sort of, so I've got 8 weeks. What should I be doing by, week 4? Where should I be at by week 6? Where should I be at by week 8? Because then a bunch of them replied and said, oh, well, really, the first thing you should do is try and watch as much of the material as you can so you understand all of the material, and then that will make everything quicker. And I think if I hadn't reached out for some advice like that, I would have maybe not watched all the material in the first week, and then that slows everything down.
Yeah,
So,
and actually,
yeah,
I think ask questions, don't you, Dan? Like you say, reach out and ask questions to people, because it is a really terrifying experience, and it's sort of like no one prepares you for it when you're new at it, and you sit there and you go, I don't know, is the editor my boss? Am I theirs? Or is it neither? And we've obviously established it is neither. You need to work as a team, but you're right. What is even the first thing you do? But I think if you just share and ask questions, if you've got.
I think also one thing, Kimberly, is I think new edit producers are a bit scared of their bosses, so scared of the SP, scared of series producers, scared of the exec. And it's like, when you do get stuck on something, there's nothing wrong with sort of passing it by them and just saying, look, we're on this. What do you think about this? I mean, obviously they don't want to know every single little detail, but if it's something that you're really struggling with, then it's always good to, I think, to, ask up, and they'll admire you for doing that as well.
Well, they should do. And I think if they don't, then you're not in a particularly supportive company. But you're right. I think people are often too scared and sort of suffer in silence. And there's a lot to be offloaded as a team.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks, everyone. People are saying it's been a brilliant session. And thank you, Sarah. Thanks to the panel. Thanks for your time and expertise. I just think it's really nice to chat about these things in a really informal way. It's not scary. Well, it is scary, but it isn't if you can share and speak honestly and be more confident. I think is that confident with a little vulnerability of I don't know everything, so can I ask you guys a question? That sounds like the sort of measure of where we've come to. So thank you guys. Thanks Derek, Celine, Tonye, Dan, who's about to jump out the car and shoot someone that we're not allowed to know about. Very exciting times. Yes, thanks for say again.
No, I'm not going to shoot someone, but
you might be shooting with someone, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Just to clarify, he's not a murderer. Thank you very much, everyone. Next Facebook live session will be in a couple of weeks on Wednesday lunchtime. Send us your CVs if you haven't. Things are getting busier. I really think March, April is going to explode. So make sure you're ready. And see you next time. Thank you ever so much, everyone. And I'll see you very soon. Bye.
Thanks, Kimberly.